Welcome, curious souls and brave wanderers, to a journey through the shadows of South Carolina, land where history's whispers never fade and restless spirits roam free. Tonight, we delve deep into the most haunted places across this charming southern state, where chilling tales of sorrow, mystery, and terror lurk behind the moss-strapped trees and crumbling walls. From ancient plantations and battlefields soaked in blood to forgotten jails and eerie lighthouses, South Carolina holds secrets that refuse to rest. Whether you're a skeptic or a believer, prepare yourself for a spine-tingling exploration of the top 20 most haunted places in South Carolina. So turn off the lights, settle in, and let the ghosts of the past tell their stories.
The Old Charleston Jail is more than just an abandoned building. It is a relic of darkness, an edifice that has witnessed nearly 2 centuries of cruelty, despair, and death. Standing ominously on Magazine Street, its weathered stone facade and barred windows tell a story of suffering that began in 1802, when it first opened its gates to the condemned for 137 years. This foreboding structure served as a prison for Charleston's most dangerous criminals, pirates, and traitors, and its reputation for brutality was known far beyond the city limits. From the very beginning, the Old Charleston Jail was designed to instill fear. Its towering walls, heavy iron doors, and dank, airless cells became the last home for thousands who would never taste freedom again. The jail was a place of torment and hopelessness, where punishment was harsh and mercy was rare. In its earliest days, it even housed prisoners of war during the War of 1812 and later Confederate deserters during the Civil War. Executions were carried out within its grounds, and death was as common as the sound of chains rattling in the corridors. One of the most notorious figures associated with the jail is Lavinia Fisher, often cited as America's first female serial killer. She and her husband, John Fisher, operated a boarding house just outside Charleston in the early 1800s. According to legend, they preyed on unsuspecting travelers, offering them a place to stay before murdering them in cold blood. When the authorities finally caught up with the Fishers, they were locked away in the Old Charleston Jail, awaiting their fate. Lavinia's final days were said to be filled with rage and defiance. When she was led to the gallows in 1820, she reportedly shouted to the crowd, "If anyone has a message for the devil, tell me now, for I shall see him shortly." Her chilling words have echoed through history, and many believe her tormented spirit never left the jail. Visitors and paranormal investigators claim to hear a woman's anguished cries late at night, and some have even seen an apparition in a white dress roaming the upper floors. But Lavinia is not the only restless soul said to wander these crumbling halls. Former inmates, many of whom met violent ends, are believed to linger within the decaying structure. Disembodied voices have been heard whispering in the darkness. Heavy footsteps echo along empty corridors, only to stop abruptly when investigated. In certain cells, the air turns icy cold without warning, as some visitors report feeling an invisible hand brush against their skin. Others speak of shadows that dart across the walls, or figures peering from behind bars before vanishing into thin air. Perhaps the most terrifying encounters occur in the dungeon-like where conditions were once so horrific that men were chained to the walls, left to rot in darkness. Paranormal teams exploring this area have captured chilling EVP's electronic voice, phenomenon, cries for help, and even sinister laughter. Some investigators have reported being scratched or pushed by unseen forces. It is as if the very walls themselves absorb the anguish of those who suffered here and now, release it in unrelenting waves. The jail also has ties to piracy, as it once held several notorious outlaws of the sea. Among them was the infamous pirate Captain Kidd, who was reportedly confined within these walls before his execution, while history blurs the details of his imprisonment. Many claim that a shadowy figure dressed in 18th century clothing has been seen near the old cells believed to have held pirates. Some even say the faint sound of chains dragging across the stone floors can still be heard on quiet nights. Though the Old Charleston Jail officially closed its doors in 1939, its dark legacy refuses to die. The building remains a magnet for thrill seekers and ghost hunters, drawn by tales of spectral encounters and the hope of capturing evidence of the afterlife. Paranormal tours and investigations often report unexplained phenomena, cold spots that chill to the bone, sudden drops in temperature, flickering lights, and the feeling of being watched by unseen eyes. Time is not softened the jail's grim presence. The cracked walls, rusted bars, and shadow-filled corners seem to whisper stories of the damned. Every creak of the old wooden floors, every gust of wind rattling the windows feels like a reminder that the past is not truly gone. For those who dare to enter, the Old Charleston Jail offers a chilling experience. Confrontation with history, darkest chapters, and the lingering spirits of those who never found peace. To this day, many believe the building is more than haunted. It is cursed. From within its walls remain echoes of suffering so deep that they have seeped into the very fabric of the place. Whether it is the spirit of Lavinia Fisher, the wraiths of long-dead prisoners, or something far more sinister, one thing is certain: the Old Charleston Jail is not empty. And when night falls and the city grows quiet, the dead come out to remind the living that some doors should never have been opened.
The Old Slave Mart Museum, located on Chalmers Street in Charleston, South Carolina, is a site heavy with sorrow and the weight of an unthinkable history. This building, now a museum, once operated as a slave auction, housed from 1856 until the Civil War brought an end to legalized slavery in the region. Within these walls, countless enslaved Africans were torn from their families and futures, sold to the highest bidder, their humanity reduced to mere property. The Old Slave Mart Museum stands today not only as a stark reminder of this dark chapter in American history, but also as a place where many believe the spirits of those who suffered remain restless and unresolved. The building itself is an unassuming brick structure, yet it carries an overwhelming emotional charge. The exterior, with its modest facade, hides a brutal past that few can imagine without feeling a profound sadness. When the site was operational, enslaved men, women, and children were forced into cramped holding cells, awaiting sale to plantation owners and traders. These auctions were not just transactions. They were acts of profound cruelty, separating families and extinguishing hope. Visitors to the museum are taken through exhibits that chronicle the horrors of the slave trade in Charleston. Artifacts, documents, and personal stories reveal the dehumanizing treatment endured by enslaved Africans. Yet, For many who have walked these halls, the historical record is only one part of the experience. The Old Slave Mart Museum is also a place where the veil between the living and the dead is said to be thin. Countless accounts from visitors and staff describe eerie and unsettling phenomena. Some report hearing the soft sound of weeping echoing faintly through the rooms, as if the sorrow of the enslaved souls still lingers in the air. Others describe the distinct sound of chains dragging slowly across the wooden floors, a chilling reminder of the restraints once used to bind captives before their sale. Shadowy figures have been spotted, moving silently in the background, sometimes glimpsed out of the corner of one's eye or caught on camera. These apparitions are described as indistinct shapes, often resembling the silhouettes of men and children, an unsettling presence that seems to mirror the people who once suffered there. Visitors sometimes feel sudden drops in temperature, a coldness that cuts through the humid Charleston air, accompanied by a heavy sense of sorrow and despair. One staff member at the museum shared a story about a visitor who, upon entering one of the former holding rooms, was overwhelmed with a wave of emotion and began to cry uncontrollably, despite no prior knowledge of the room's history. The visitor later said they felt the weight of generations of grief pressing down on them, as if the pain of the past was reaching out to be acknowledged. The paranormal activity reported at the Old Slave Mart Museum is not isolated to visitors alone. Employees who work in the building regularly speak of unexplained noises, including footsteps in empty hallways and voices murmuring in languages long forgotten. Some have seen objects move without explanation, while others have felt the sensation of being touched when no one else is near. These experiences have led many to believe that the museum is a gateway to the past, a place where the anguish of those who suffered cannot be contained by time or death. It is a reminder that history, especially one so fraught with cruelty, leaves behind more than just facts on a page. It leaves imprints on the very places where events occurred. The museum's mission is twofold. On one hand, it serves as an educational institution dedicated to illuminating the harsh realities of the transatlantic slave trade and its impact on Charleston and the broader American South. On the other, it stands as a spiritual space where the pain of those who were enslaved is honored and remembered, ensuring their stories are not forgotten. Visitors are encouraged to approach the museum with respect and solemnity, aware that it is not just a historical site, but a resting place for countless souls who endured unimaginable suffering. Guided tours provide context not only for the history, but for the lingering presence many have felt. The aim is to foster understanding and empathy, connecting modern audiences with the lived experiences of those who were enslaved. Local folklore surrounding the Old Slave Mart Museum also adds layers to its haunted reputation. Stories circulate of former slaves who made a desperate pact to protect their families from the horrors within the auction house. Some legends speak of hidden tunnels beneath the building, where desperate attempts to escape were made. Though no such tunnels have been definitively discovered, whether fact or myth, these stories echo the resilience of those who suffered and their desire for freedom. The museum is part of Charleston's broader commitment to confronting its complicated and painful past. The city itself, rich in history, grapples with the legacy of slavery in many of its landmarks and institutions. The Old Slave Mart Museum stands as a vital piece of this mosaic, both a place of remembrance and a beacon of truth. Visitors often leave the museum changed, carrying with them not only knowledge, but a profound emotional impression. The echoes of the past, the whispered sorrows, and the spectral presences challenge visitors to confront history in a deeply personal way. For some, the experience ignites a call to justice and reconciliation. For others, it is a solemn reminder of human cruelty. And in recent years, the Old Slave Mart Museum has also become a focus for paranormal researchers interested in documenting its reputed equipment set up during investigations has picked up unexplained voices and anomalies, lending credibility to the many eyewitness accounts. While science cannot fully explain these phenomena, the evidence supports the belief that the spirits of the enslaved continued to reach out from beyond, demanding to be heard and remembered. The story of the Old Slave Mart Museum is not just one of darkness and despair. It is also a story of survival, memory, and the ongoing struggle to reconcile with a painful past. It challenges us to remember those who were silenced and to honor their resilience. The museum's haunting serves as a poignant reminder that history is never truly behind us. It lives on in the places we carry forward, in the shadows we cannot ignore. Boone Hall Plantation, located in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina, is one of the oldest working plantations in America, with a history that spans nearly 350 years. Its sprawling acres of fertile soil have long been known for their agricultural productivity, but beneath the surface of its picturesque beauty lies a deeply haunting legacy. Boone Hall's grounds are steeped in the history of slavery and endurance, and many believe that the spirits of those who suffered there still walk its pathways. Their presence, a silent testimony to a painful past. The plantation was established in 1681 and quickly became a significant site for growing crops like cotton and pecans. Over the centuries, the estate expanded and evolved, but one constant remained: the forced labor of enslaved Africans. These individuals lived and worked in harsh conditions, confined to cramped cabins near the main house. Their lives were marked by toil, suffering, and a relentless struggle for survival. Though the plantation has transformed dramatically since those days, the echoes of that era remain strong, especially in the slave quarters and surrounding grounds. Today, visitors to Boone Hall often recount chilling experiences that suggest the presence of spirits tied to the plantation as history. Many have reported hearing disembodied voices whispering in the breeze or calling out softly in the dead of night. These voices seem to drift through the trees and across the fields, creating an eerie atmosphere that lingers long after visitors leave. Some say these sounds carry the sorrow and pain of those who once lived and labored here, their souls unable to find peace. Along the dusty plantation roads and near the old slave cabins, visitors and staff alike have witnessed mysterious footsteps where no one is visible. The sounds of soft walking, sometimes hurried, sometimes slow, have been heard echoing in the early morning or late evening hours, adding an unsettling element to the plantation's serene setting. These phantom footsteps suggest that the spirits of former enslaved people may still be moving through the land they once called home. Among the most commonly reported paranormal encounters at Boone Hall is the sighting of a mysterious woman dressed in period clothing. This apparition is often seen walking alone along the plantation roads or near the slave quarters. Witnesses describe her appearance as sudden and startling. She seems to materialize from thin air, silently gliding across the grounds before vanishing without a trace. The woman's identity remains unknown, but many believe she could be a former resident or enslaved individual whose spirit continues to linger. The story of this ghostly woman has captivated visitors for years. Some speculate that she may be searching for a lost loved one or forever trapped in the painful memories of her life on the plantation. Her presence is both haunting and sorrowful, a poignant reminder of the human lives behind the history of Boone Hall. She embodies the resilience and tragedy of those who endured unimaginable hardship in an era defined by injustice. Boone Hall's slave cabins themselves hold a particular significance in the plantation's haunted legacy. These small wooden structures, restored to reflect their original condition, stand as stark reminders of the brutal realities of slavery. Inside these cabins, guests sometimes report feeling sudden chills and overwhelming emotions. The air is thick, with a palpable sense of sorrow and loss, as if the walls themselves carry the weight of generations of suffering. Paranormal investigators visiting Boone Hall have captured various unexplained phenomena. Electronic voice recordings have picked up faint cries and whispered names, while cameras have caught fleeting shadows moving just beyond the frame. Temperature readings often show sudden drops in the slave quarters, consistent with typical signs of ghostly activity. These findings reinforce the idea that Boone Hall is not only a historic landmark, but also a site of ongoing spiritual unrest. Beyond the ghost stories, Boone Hall Plantation also stands as a testament to the endurance of the enslaved people who lived there. The plantation has taken steps to honor their memory through educational programs and preservation efforts. Visitors can tour the grounds and learn about the harsh realities of slavery, gaining a deeper understanding of the human cost behind the plantation's historic beauty. The juxtaposition of Boone Hall's serene, lush landscape and its dark, haunted history creates a powerful atmosphere. Walking through its gardens and along its Oakland avenues, visitors can almost sense the layers of time folding together, the elegance of antebellum architecture and the painful legacy of bondage. The spirits said to haunt the plantation's roads and cabins serve as an unspoken narrative, reminding all who visit that, beneath the charm and grandeur lies a history of cruelty and courage. Stories from former workers and residents of Boone Hall often speak of an unshakable feeling of being watched or followed. Some recount sudden, unexplained movements in empty rooms, or glimpses of figures standing silently at the edge of vision. These encounters contribute to the plantation's reputation as one of South Carolina's most haunted sites and draw paranormal enthusiasts eager to experience its mysteries firsthand. One poignant tale involves a visitor who, while walking the plantation roads at dusk, saw the figure of the woman in period dress. The apparition appeared serene yet sorrowful, her eyes reflecting a deep sadness. The visitor described feeling a rush of emotion and a sense of connection, as if the spirit was reaching out across the centuries. Moments later, the figure faded into the evening mist, leaving behind a profound silence. Boone Hall's haunted legacy also serves as a reminder of the resilience and strength of those who lived under oppression. While their lives were marked by hardship, the enduring presence of their spirits suggests a continued connection to the land and a refusal to be forgotten. The plantation is thus both a site of tragedy and a place of remembrance, where the stories of the enslaved continue to be told through history and haunting alike. The Dock Street Theater, nestled in the heart of Charleston, South Carolina, is more than just a historic performance venue. It's a portal to another time, where the echoes of tragedy, artistry, and spectral presence merge in chilling harmony. Built in 1736, it stands as one of the oldest theaters in America. Over the centuries, it has burned, been rebuilt, and repurposed. Yet through all its transformations, one thing has remained constant: the whispers of the past that still linger in its halls. The theater's original construction was a grand gesture for colonial Charleston, then a bustling port city. Dock Street itself, now known as Church Street, was the city's center of culture and commerce. The theater became a place where Charleston's elite gathered, where Shakespearean dramas and operatic performances filled the air with music and verse. But behind the beauty of its architecture and the grandeur of the stage, the Dock Street Theater has always carried a darker undertone, one woven from the lives and deaths of those who moved within its walls. Among the many ghostly tales tied to the theater, one of the most commonly reported apparitions is that of an old man seen wandering backstage and occasionally in the balconies. This spirit is often described wearing 18th century attire, complete with a tall hat and cane. Some believe this ghost is the spirit of the theater's first manager, who was said to have lived a troubled life, burdened by debt and professional turmoil. Others suggest he might have been a former owner or performer who died on the premises, regardless of his identity. The spirit is seen so frequently and consistently that many staff have come to regard him as a permanent resident. Witnesses have described hearing heavy footsteps when no one else is around, particularly in the upper galleries or descending the creaking stairs behind the stage. Doors have been known to slam shut with no wind or explanation, and props are often found moved or rearranged when no one claims responsibility. At times, lights flicker without electrical cause, and the old wooden floorboards groan beneath invisible steps. But the most tragic and enduring legend of the Dock Street Theater belongs to a young woman known simply as Nettie. She was not a famous actress, nor a celebrated singer, but rather a young hopeful who longed for stardom and recognition. According to local lore, Nettie came to Charleston, seeking a better life, escaping a world of poverty. She found work at the nearby Planters Hotel, which once occupied the theater's space during a period of reconstruction in the 19th century. Some accounts say she was a chambermaid. Others claim she turned to a life of desperation, seeking affection and opportunity in all the wrong places. It is believed that Nettie dreamed of the stage. She would stand in the shadows during rehearsals, imagining the spotlight on her. One stormy night, she reportedly found herself on stage during an empty evening, perhaps rehearsing lines or performing silently for the vacant seats. A bolt of lightning struck the building, igniting a fire that quickly consumed much of the structure. Nettie died in that blaze, her dreams reduced to ashes. But many say her spirit never left. Today, theatergoers and actors alike claim to have seen a ghostly figure of a young woman in a red dress, standing center stage, looking out into the empty audience. Her eyes are described as sorrowful, searching, as if waiting for a round of applause that will never come. Her apparition is often accompanied by a sudden chill. Even on the warmest of Charleston nights, some have seen her during rehearsals, mistaking her for a costumed actress, only for her to vanish moments later without a sound. The stage, it seems, still belongs to her. Performers have also spoken of a sense of being watched from the wings, or the sensation of a gentle hand brushing against their shoulder when no one is near. There have even been reports of quiet sobbing echoing from behind the curtains or empty dressing rooms. Though unnerving, many say these moments are more sorrowful than terrifying, as if the spirits trapped here seek recognition, not revenge. In recent years, paranormal investigators have visited the Dock Street Theater to document the unexplained activity. They've captured strange EVPs, electronic voice phenomena, including faint whispers, distant cries, and unexplained knocking. Thermal cameras have shown inexplicable cold spots, and some devices have registered sudden spikes in electromagnetic fields where no wires or equipment are present. These findings support what so many witnesses have already claimed. The Dock Street Theater is alive with more than just history. Yet despite its hauntings, the Dock Street Theater remains one of Charleston's proudest historic landmarks. Restored to its former glory, it continues to host plays, concerts, and cultural events. The audience seats are filled regularly with eager patrons, some of whom may be sharing the space with more than just fellow theater. For many, the ghosts of the Dock Street Theater are not simply spooky legends. They are part of the theater's enduring identity, the lingering essence of lives once entwined with drama, dreams, and disaster. The spirits here do not seem malevolent. Rather, they seem to exist in a timeless loop, connected eternally to the passion and heartbreak that filled the theater centuries ago. Whether one believes in ghosts or not, there is something undeniably powerful about walking into the Dock Street Theater. The creak of the floorboards, the scent of aged wood, and the hush that falls over the audience just before the curtain rises all hint at the layers of history buried within. And if you sit quietly, just for a moment, you might feel a presence beside you, watching the stage with eyes that have seen lifetimes come and go, waiting for a story that speaks to them once more. Hampton Plantation State Historic Site, located near McClellanville, South Carolina, stands as a solemn and majestic reminder of the region's colonial past. Built in the 1730s, the plantation was once a symbol of wealth and prosperity, surrounded by rice fields that stretched to the horizon. But behind the grandeur of its Georgian-style mansion and sweeping Oakland paths lies a much darker legacy, one marked by the suffering of enslaved people, personal tragedy, and ghostly presences that seem unwilling to let the past rest. The plantation house, now preserved as a historic site, sits in eerie silence most days. Its rooms, though beautifully maintained, often feel as if they are holding their breath, waiting, perhaps, for someone long gone to return. Visitors frequently report a peculiar sensation upon entering the main hallway, a sudden drop in temperature, a whisper of wind with no source, or the unmistakable feeling of being watched. Some claim the walls themselves seem to pulse with the memory of those who once lived and died within. One of the most frequently mentioned supernatural events at Hampton Plantation involves the sound of piano music drifting through the air. Staff and guests alike have heard the delicate strains of a melody echoing from empty rooms, especially around dusk. The notes are often faint, yet undeniably real, as though someone is practicing a long-forgotten tune. But no piano remains in the house today. The original instrument, once used for evening gatherings and entertainment, was removed generations ago. Still, the music persists. Many believe it to be the spectral echo of a time when the plantation bustled with parties, laughter, and an upper class, oblivious to the torment of those who worked the land under forced labor. Then there are the apparitions, full-bodied figures in period dress. Had been seen gliding silently across rooms and hallways before vanishing into thin air. Witnesses often describe a tall man in colonial garb, believed to be Thomas Lee, the plantation's original owner. Lee was a prominent figure in South Carolina's colonial era, and his influence helped shape the property into a thriving estate. Though he died centuries ago, there are countless stories of his spirit still walking the halls, inspecting the rooms, peering through windows, or lingering near the grand staircase. Some say he appears with a stern expression, silently observing all who enter his once proud home. But it's not only Lee's presence that's felt. In the gardens near the back of the plantation house, visitors have encountered the ghost of a young girl, often seen skipping along the gravel paths or sitting quietly beneath one of the massive oaks. She is dressed in a faded white gown, her hair in ringlets, her demeanor both playful and sorrowful. Local legend suggests she was the daughter of a plantation resident, possibly a guest or extended family member, who died tragically on the grounds. Some say from fever, others from an accident involving a fall near the rice fields. Her spirit appears to be more benign than others reported at Hampton, and many feel a sense of sadness rather than fear when they see her. Dogs reportedly refuse to approach the area where she is most often seen, barking or whimpering as if reacting to an unseen presence. A few visitors have even described hearing a child's laughter in the wind, or the rustling of a dress brushing past them, only to turn and find no one there. Staff working at the plantation have their own share of unsettling tales. Maintenance workers have encountered locked doors swinging open on their own, tools moving from one place to another without explanation, and the feeling of being followed when alone inside the house. Docents have spoken of sudden chills during tours, and at times, guests have fainted in the front parlor for reasons no doctor could explain. Some chalk it up to the oppressive summer heat and intense emotion stirred by the site's history, while others are convinced it's something else entirely. One former tour guide recounted an incident during a school visit. As she explained the plantation's past to a group of students, she suddenly heard a loud knock echoing through the house. Thinking someone had gotten lost, she paused and went to check, but all the doors were closed and no one was missing. When she returned to the group, a student pointed out the window and asked, "Who was that girl in the garden?" No one else had seen her, except, perhaps, the child who still plays where she once lived. Paranormal investigators who have visited Hampton Plantation have recorded several unexplained phenomena: cold spots, strange electromagnetic fluctuations, and even electronic voice phenomena. Faint voices captured in the stillness have been documented. Some of these recordings include what sounds like a man's voice, reciting names or giving orders, while others feature a young girl humming or whispering unintelligibly. These subtle, haunting remnants suggest that the plantation is not merely a preserved piece of architecture, but a vessel holding the energy of all who pass through it. Hampton Plantation is more than a historical site. It is a place where memory lingers long after the living have gone. Its beauty is undeniable. The sun streaming through the Spanish moss, the stillness of the reflecting pond, the rhythmic rustling of the trees. Yet beneath that beauty lies a complex, painful history that refuses to be forgotten. The house and its grounds are haunted not only by spirits, but by the legacy of a time when human lives were measured in labor and loss. Visitors leave Hampton with more than photographs. They carry with them a sense of reverence and a touch of unease, as though they've brushed up against something eternal. For in the quiet moments, when the air turns cold and music fills the silence, it becomes clear that Hampton Plantation is still very much alive with the stories of those who once called it home. Rising stoically from the waters of Charleston Harbor, Fort Sumter stands as a solemn monument to one of America's darkest chapters. best known as the site where the first shots of the Civil War were fired on April 12, 1861. The fort has long served as a place of reflection and remembrance. Yet beyond the historical markers and weathered bricks lies a deeper, more haunting legacy, one that speaks not through textbooks, but through whispers on the wind, phantom footsteps in the night, and figures that vanish before your eyes. Fort Sumter, many believe, is still very much alive with the echoes of its bloody past. Construction on the fort began in 1829, intended to protect Charleston from naval invasion. Built on a man-made island, the fort saw little action for decades until the turbulent secession crisis plunged the country into civil war. It was here that Confederate forces opened fire on Union troops stationed at the fort, marking the official beginning of the conflict. For 34 hours, cannon shells exploded against the ramparts. Smoke filled the air, and history was irreversibly altered. Though there were no casualties during the initial bombardment, Fort Sumter would not be spared the violence of war in the years that followed. The structure was heavily damaged, and soldiers both Union and Confederate would lose their lives in its defense and retaking. Today, Fort Sumter is a National Historic Site, accessible only by boat and visited by thousands each year. By daylight, the fort tells its story through displays, crumbling walls, and cannon placements left as reminders of the battles waged here. But when the last ferry departs and darkness settles over the harbor, a different story begins to unfold. One that's not written in official records, but passed down in quiet conversations and uneasy glances from those who've seen more than history books can explain. Park rangers and visitors alike have reported the unmistakable sounds of a battle that should no longer rage. Sharp, isolated gunshots echoing across the empty grounds, distant cannon fire booming through the stillness, and the rhythmic thud of marching boots on stone walkways. These sounds often occur on calm, windless nights when the harbor is silent and still. Some have even described hearing muffled voices, commands shouted in urgency, followed by the groans of wounded men. Yet no reenactments are scheduled, and the fort is empty, save for the few staff who remain behind. One ranger recounted locking the gates after closing hours and walking the perimeter, only to hear the crunch of boots behind him. When he turned, expecting a straggler or fellow employee, he found the walkway completely empty. Moments later, a gust of cold air swept past him, though the summer night was warm. That same ranger later said he would never stay alone in the fort again. Apparitions are also part of Fort Sumter's eerie reputation. Over the years, visitors have reported seeing figures dressed in both Union blue and Confederate gray. These spectral soldiers appear along the walls, pacing silently or standing guard at what would have once been a lookout post. Some vanish the moment they're seen. Others fade slowly, as though dissolving into the surrounding brick. One particularly persistent ghost is said to appear near the flagpole, a tall man with a wide-brimmed hat, his features obscured, who watches silently as if still awaiting orders. There's even a tale of a young Confederate soldier seen standing in one of the artillery rooms, his face pale, his hands resting on an old, rusted cannon. Those who've seen him say he looks sad, contemplative, as if unaware of his own death. He never speaks, never moves, but his presence fills the room with a sorrow so heavy that visitors often leave in silence, unable to explain the emotion that overtakes them. The fort's construction, steeped in conflict, may also contribute to its lingering energy. The bricks used to build Fort Sumter were made by enslaved laborers in South Carolina, and the suffering tied to that forced labor adds another layer of spiritual unrest. Some believe the land itself absorbed the trauma of those years, serving not only as a battlefield, but as a vessel for pain, resistance, and loss. Paranormal investigators have conducted overnight sessions within the fort, using thermal cameras, EVP devices, and electromagnetic field readers. Many have walked away with unexplained results, voices recorded in empty rooms, lights flickering in areas without power, and sudden drops in temperature near the powder magazines. One recording captured what sounded like a man quietly whispering the word, "Hold," a possible reference to holding the line during battle. Despite its haunted reputation, Fort Sumter remains a place of profound respect. The spirits said to dwell here are not malevolent. They are soldiers, commanders, and perhaps even civilians, bound not by vengeance but by duty, memory, and the violent upheaval of their time. They linger, perhaps not even realizing that the war they fought in ended over a century ago. There is a strange beauty in the stillness of Fort Sumter after dark. The ruins cast long shadows across the courtyard, and the lapping of water against the foundation becomes a somber lullaby. For those who believe, the fort is not just a historical monument, it is a spiritual echo chamber, where the voices of the past continue to call out, asking not to be forgotten. Whether one believes in ghosts or not, there's no denying the weight that Fort Sumter carries. Its stones are etched with history, its grounds soaked in the memory of war. And as long as the fort stands, some say the souls who defended it, those who died with unfinished stories, will remain. Marching through the darkness, keeping watch over the harbor they once fought to control. St. Helens Island, nestled in Beaufort County, South Carolina, is a place where the past lingers like mist over the marshes, known for its deep ties to Gola culture and African-American heritage. The island carries with it an atmosphere that is both sacred and haunted. Time moves slowly here, as if reluctant to disturb the echoes of those who came before. The land whispers with memory, and for those who listen closely, the island tells stories, some beautiful, others unsettling. One of the most enduring and chilling legends of St. Helena Island is that of the Wailing Woman. Locals say her cries can be heard at dusk, drifting over the tidal creeks and through the swaying marsh grass. Her sobs are soft at first, almost mistaken for the call of a bird or the creak of cypress trees. But then, the sound grows, sharper, piercing, desperate, filled with longing. Fishermen and shrimpers, hardened by years of early mornings and rough waters, have returned from the sea, pale and shaken, swearing they heard a woman crying their name through the fog. According to local legend, the Wailing Woman was once a young Gullah mother, a descendant of enslaved Africans, who had made the island their home after emancipation. Her children, the story goes, vanished one stormy night. Some say they drowned when the rising tide overwhelmed the shoreline, while others claimed they were taken by something more sinister, spirits from the old world. Angered by the disrespect of the living, the grief-stricken mothers searched for days, her cries echoing across the fields and the shore, until her body was found near the marsh, her arms reaching out toward the sea. Since then, her spirit has never left. Fishermen claim that seeing the Wailing Woman is a bad omen. Boats that cross her path are said to experience engine failure, tangled nets, or worse, an accident at sea. One shrimper recalled a night when a thick fog rolled in without warning. Through the dense gray, he saw the figure of a woman standing knee-deep in the water, her dress clinging to her legs, her long hair soaked. She raised her arms to him, her mouth opening in a silent scream. Moments later, his boat struck a submerged log, cracking the hull and flooding the engine. He managed to swim ashore, but the memory of her face still haunts him. But the Wailing Woman is not the only spirit said to roam St. Helena Island. The land itself seems to hum with ancestral energy, rooted in a history of slavery, resilience, and cultural preservation. The island bears witness to centuries of sorrow and strength. The Gula people, descendants of West African slaves, have maintained their language, food, and traditions in defiance of time and oppression. Their connection to the spiritual world is deep and unbroken. Storytelling, song, and ritual all reflect a belief that the dead walk beside the living not as threats, but as protectors and reminders. Old churches and praise houses. The island, some still in use, others leaning with age. Inside, the walls feel heavy, saturated with decades of prayers, grief, and celebration. One such church near the marsh is rumored to be watched over by a spirit known as the Lantern Keeper. He's described as a tall man in a brimmed hat, carrying an old kerosene lantern. People say he appears to lost travelers on dark roads, guiding them back to safety until they turn to thank him and find no one there. Elders say he was once a watchman for the church grounds, murdered while protecting the sacred land from grave robbers during Reconstruction. In death, he continues to keep watch. The island's past is marked by plantations, many long since reclaimed by the land. On moonlit nights, people say, you can hear the sounds of chain gangs and hymns rising from the earth. During the Civil War, the island was a center of early African American education, with the Penn School established to teach freed slaves. The buildings still stand today, and visitors have reported cold spots, flickering lights, and disembodied footsteps echoing through the classrooms. Some believe the spirits of students and teachers remain guardians of a dream that once seemed impossible. Despite the ghostly tales, or perhaps because of them, St. Helena Island remains a place of reverence. Its haunting beauty draws artists, historians, and spiritual seekers. The Spanish moss that drapes from ancient oaks seems to listen, the air thick with stories waiting to be told. Whether one believes in spirits or not, there is no denying the weight of presence here. Something unseen moves beneath the surface, woven into the fabric of the island itself. On quiet nights, when the wind moves just right, the marshes begin to speak. And sometimes, if you're not careful, you might hear the wailing woman calling out from the shadows, not out of malice, but from a pain so deep it has outlived death. Her legend endures not only as a ghost story, but as a symbol of grief, memory, and the enduring bond between mother and child. In the heart of the low country, her cries remind us that some sorrows never leave, they simply shift. Like the tides of St. Helena Island, tucked along the historic waterfront of Charleston, South Carolina, the Battery Carriage House Inn stands as a graceful reminder of the city's antebellum past. But behind its charming facade and ivy-clad walls lies a far more mysterious reputation. Known as one of Charleston's most haunted hotels, this former carriage house has drawn the attention of countless visitors, not just for its elegance and hospitality, but for the unsettling paranormal activity reported within its walls. Built in the mid-1800s, the structure originally served as a carriage house and servants' quarters for one of the grand mansions on the Battery, Charleston's famed promenade. After the Civil War, the carriage house was converted into a private residence, and eventually into the inn that stands today. Though its transformation was meant to welcome travelers and guests, many believe that some of its former occupants never left. From the moment guests step into the inn, there is a palpable sense that they are not alone. The halls are quiet, almost too quiet, and the air carries a faint chill, even in the heat of a Charleston summer. Some guests say the temperature drops suddenly in certain rooms, as if someone or something has entered. Others have watched in disbelief as doors open or close on their own, or as lamps flicker and extinguish without any cause. These unexplained happenings have become so common that the innkeepers now leave a small journal in each room for guests to record their experiences. Many pages are filled with trembling handwriting, documenting everything from shadowy figures in the mirror to the sensation of unseen hands brushing past. Perhaps the most well-known ghost at the Battery Carriage House Inn is that of a Confederate soldier. He is often seen wearing a tattered gray uniform, his face pale and mournful. Witnesses describe waking up in the middle of the night to find him standing silently at the foot of their bed, watching them with hollow eyes. One woman recounted the moment she opened her eyes and saw him seated in the corner chair of room 8, his hand resting on his saber. She screamed, and the figure vanished before her husband could flip on the light. Historians believe this apparition may be linked to a young Confederate officer who was mortally wounded during the siege of Charleston. Rather than let him die on the battlefield, his family brought him home to the carriage house, where he succumbed to his injuries. His spirit, bound by duty or pain, is said to wander the inn's halls, searching for the peace he never found in life. Room 10 is another hotspot for supernatural activity. Guests have reported oppressive sensations upon entering: dizziness, nausea, and an overwhelming sense of dread. Some say a dark, shadowy figure manifests in this room, looming near the bed before dissolving into the walls. Paranormal investigators have captured unexplained EMF spikes, audio recordings of distant whispers, and even infrared images that suggest a human form where no one was standing. The room is still available for brave visitors, but staff will quietly warn those who inquire that the experience might be more than they bargained for. Not all the spirits here are frightening. However, some guests claim to have encountered the ghost of a young woman dressed in white, believed to be the daughter of a wealthy merchant who once lived on the property. According to legend, she fell in love with a soldier beneath her social class, and when her family forbade the union, she leapt from an upper window in despair. Her soft footsteps are sometimes heard on the stairs, and several visitors have awakened to find a woman sitting at the edge of their bed, gently weeping. Despite these chilling accounts, the Battery Carriage House Inn remains a popular destination, especially among those fascinated by the paranormal. Ghost hunters, mediums, and skeptics alike book rooms, hoping to catch a glimpse of the otherworldly. The inn itself embraces its haunted reputation with quiet respect, offering no staged frights or dramatic tours. Only the stories and the spirits speak for themselves. It is this subtle blending of southern charm and spectral mystery that gives the inn its unique character. The antique furniture, creaking floorboards, and flickering gas lanterns all contribute to the feeling of stepping back in time. For many, the experience is not just about ghost sightings, but about connecting to the energy of a place that has witnessed centuries of love, war, sorrow, and staff members, while professional and warm, have their own stories to tell. One longtime housekeeper refuses to clean room 8 alone, citing cold drafts and the distinct sensation of being watched. A night manager once heard a piano playing softly in the parlor only to discover the room empty and the piano untouched. These stories are shared in hushed tones with a mixture of reverence and fear. The Battery Carriage House Inn stands as a testament to Charleston's city where beauty and tragedy have always walked hand in hand. It is more than just a hotel. It is a living, breathing presence, a place where the veil between the living and the dead is just a little thinner. For those who dare to spend the night, the experience is unforgettable. Whether drawn by curiosity, belief, or the thrill of the unknown, visitors leave with more than just photographs. They carry with them a piece of the inn's haunted soul.
In the quiet coastal town of McClellanville, South Carolina, tucked behind overgrown brush and moss-draped oaks, stands a crumbling relic of justice gone awry, the Old McClellanville Jail. Built in the late 1800s, the jail once served as a holding cell for petty criminals, vagrants, and the occasional drifter who wandered too far off the beaten path. Its iron-barred windows and weather-beaten brick exterior have stood against time. But the same cannot be said for the darkness that festers within. Locals speak of a lingering presence that refuses to be forgotten, a ghost born from pain, shame, and a fatal mistake. The most chilling tale associated with the jail begins with a man whose name has long since been lost to history, but whose suffering remains etched in the town's memory. Arrested for a violent crime that many now suspect he may not have committed, the man was sentenced to hang in the courtyard behind the jail. The execution was meant to be swift, efficient, and final. But something went horribly wrong. Whether due to sabotage, incompetence, or the hand of fate, the gallows malfunctioned. Instead of breaking his neck, the rope merely tightened slowly, strangling him over the course of agonizing minutes. Some say it took nearly half an hour before his suffering ended. What makes the story even more harrowing is that the jailer, a heavy drinker with a reputation for cruelty, chose to let the man dangle long after his final breath. He left the body swinging in the humid air for hours, a grotesque warning to others. But the message the townsfolk received was not one of fear, it was one of horror. After that day, the jail was never the same. Soon after the botched hanging, strange events began to unfold. Jailers complained of hearing heavy footsteps pacing in the empty cells at night, chains would rattle on their own. One guard swore he heard, gasping choked, rasping breaths echoing from the gallows yard, even though it stood empty. Another claimed to see a figure suspended in mid-air through the window, swinging gently in a windless night. As the years went on, the jail saw fewer and fewer prisoners. Some said they refused to stay even one night behind those walls. Visitors complained of suffocating pressure in their chests, like invisible hands squeezing their throats. Tourists who stumbled across the site, now mostly abundant, often left quickly, unnerved by the feeling of being watched. Many reported catching glimpses of a shadowy figure lurking near the far cell, or a pale face staring back from behind the iron bars only to vanish when approached. Perhaps the most disturbing encounters come from those who dare to enter after dark. One local paranormal investigator, drawn by the jail's ominous reputation, claimed to hear anguished screaming the moments he stepped inside. Her equipment malfunctioned almost immediately, but restrained. Static drowned out her recordings, and cold spots danced across the room. But it was the sudden slamming of a cell door, despite no wind and no one nearby, that sent her running. She returned days later during daylight and found the heavy door that had slammed shut, rusted open, immobile. It hadn't moved in years. Some say the spirit of the hanged man still roams the jail, unable to find peace. His death, so drawn out and cruel, seems to have tethered him to the very place where his life ended. Occasionally, the smell of old rope and mildew fills the air, even in the absence of rain. Visitors report cold spots that trail them like a shadow, or the faint sound of boots scraping against the floor, following closely behind. Legends have grown around the jail, and locals warn not to mock the spirit or speak ill of the dead within its walls. One teenager, curious and cocky, broke in one Halloween night and dared the ghost to show itself. He was later found outside, curled up on the gravel with scratches on his neck and a look of pure terror frozen on his face. He refused to speak of what he saw. To this day, though McClellanville Jail remains one of South Carolina's lesser-known but most unsettling haunted locations. Unlike grand plantations or opulent mansions with their resident phantoms, this place is rot's gospawn, not of tragedy, cloaked in elegance, but of pain, injustice, and human horror. There is no beauty here, only the grim memory of a life ended too slowly and a soul unable to rest. For those who pass through McClellanville, the jail might seem like just another forgotten ruin, its history swallowed by time and vines. But for the few who dare to listen to, stand quietly at night, and feel the chill run down their spine, the truth becomes clear. Some places do not forget, and some spirits, no matter how long they've been dead, refuse to forgive.
Standing sentinel against the restless tides of the Atlantic, the Sullivan's Island Lighthouse rises like a steel and glass monolith over the windswept coast of South Carolina. Unlike the picturesque, spiral-striped lighthouses of popular lore, this one is stark and modern. A triangular tower painted in bold, black and white, standing 163 feet tall. But despite its contemporary appearance, Sullivan's Island Lighthouse harbors a legend as old as the sea, once steeped in ghost stories, maritime tragedy, and unexplained phenomena that continue to puzzle visitors to this day. Commissioned in 1962, the lighthouse was built to replace older structures that had once stood nearby. guiding ships safely past the treacherous Charleston harbor. Though it was among the last major lighthouses built in the United States, it quickly became associated with strange occurrences. Locals say that something from the past still lingers. Here's something unseen that walks the metal staircases and watches from the lantern room above. Visitors and former staff have long reported hearing phantom footsteps echoing through the lighthouse's interior. These are not the casual creaks of an old building settling, but distinct, deliberate steps ascending or descending the spiral stairwells, sometimes loud enough to startle those standing still. Yet whenever anyone goes to investigate, the tower is empty, the air eerily still. Technicians sent to perform maintenance have described the sensation of being watched, followed by sudden cold drafts that seem to rise up from the base of the tower. Even in the peak of summer heat, the lantern room, perched high above the island and offering a panoramic view of the sea, is where most of the supernatural reports originate. Several visitors claim to have seen shadowy figures standing just beyond the glass, as though a person were surveying the coast. One retired Coast Guard officer recalled a night when, while doing a final inspection, he saw what he believed to be a man standing in the lantern room back to him, coat rustling in the wind. But when he reached the top, the room was empty, and the door had never opened. More chilling are the reports of lights flickering on and off, or even turning on when no power is flowing to the system. One electrician tasked with updating the wiring in the 1980s swore that the bulb in the lantern activated by itself during a power shutdown. He left the job early that day, refusing to return alone. The anomaly was never explained. Stories began to circulate that the lighthouse is haunted by former keeper's men who lived and died tending to the light, ensuring the safety of countless ships navigating the harbor entrance. Though the current structure was never used for on-site residence like older lighthouses, the land itself has a long history of coastal navigation, dating back to the late 1700s. Prior structures were operated by lighthouse keepers, who endured storms, isolation, and the constant threat of shipwreck. Not all of them survived. One of the most enduring legends is that of Keeper William Londy's, who reportedly died in a lightning strike while climbing a ladder during a fierce storm in the mid-1800s. Though the tower he served is long gone, some believe his spirit remains, transferring its vigilance to the new structure. Witnesses have described seeing a man in period clothing, long coat, oil lamp in hand, disappearing through the steel walls of the tower. Others have felt sudden electric shocks when ascending the stairs, despite no exposed wiring or static conditions. And then there is the legend of the Weeping Keeper. Late at night, especially when the weather turns and the sea grows restless, visitors standing near the base of the lighthouse have reported hearing soft sobbing carried on the wind. It seems to come from the tower itself. Search as they might, there is never anyone there. Just the wind whipping through the grass, the sea lapping at the shore, and that quiet, mournful sound that fades as quickly as it begins. Over the years, paranormal investigators have visited Sullivan's Island Lighthouse in search of answers. Some have captured electronic voice, indistinct murmurs that seem to say things like, "Watch the light," or "Storm is coming." EMF detectors often spike near the base of the tower, even when no electronic devices are present. A few brave souls have spent the night inside, only to leave early, shaken and unwilling to discuss what they experienced. Despite the stories, or perhaps because of them, the lighthouse remains a place of fascination. Tourists arrive in steady numbers, some drawn by the rich maritime history, others by the chance to glimpse something unexpected. Park rangers and locals acknowledge the tales with a mixture of amusement and respect, never quite confirming or denying the reports. "It's just one of those places," one ranger once said. "You don't have to believe in ghosts to feel something out there. The air just changes." The Sullivan's Island Lighthouse continues to stand tall, its light automated now, flashing reliably every few seconds across the dark Atlantic waters. And yet, there is a sense that the light is not entirely alone, that the spirits of those who once kept vigil here, who gave their lives to protect ships and sailors from the rocks and shoals, are still doing their duty, watching, guiding. In the end, the lighthouse is more than just a beacon. It's a monument to endurance, to sacrifice, and perhaps to a few souls who never stop tending the flame. For those who visit on a stormy night, don't be surprised if you hear the clink of boots on steel stairs, or see a shadow in the lantern room high above. It might just be one of the old keepers, still watching, still waiting, as the sea crashes below. Along the southern tip of Charleston, South Carolina, where the Ashley and Cooper rivers meet the Atlantic, stretches a scenic promenade known as the Battery, framed by antebellum mansions and lined with towering oaks. This elegant waterfront has long been a symbol of Southern charm and historic resilience. But beneath the beauty lies a darker presence, echoes of war, death, and lingering spirits who never truly left. The Battery has borne witness to centuries of conflict and change, serving as a strategic military position during the Civil War and earlier colonial skirmishes. The seawall once held massive cannons that defended the city against Union ships, and the ground beneath the carefully manicured gardens was stained with blood, fear, and heartbreak. While tourists today stroll the promenade with cameras and ice cream cones, many find themselves unnerved by something less tangibly invisible heaviness that settles in just after dusk, as shadows lengthen across the cobblestone streets. Many ghost stories surround this stretch of Charleston, particularly near White Point Garden, the green oasis nestled at the southern end of the Battery. Known for its impressive monuments and shaded benches, it's also the center of some of the area's most unsettling tales. Visitors frequently report hearing the soft thud of marching boots, despite no one being there. The rhythmic steps echo faintly on the pathways, growing louder, then fading into silence. Some claim to hear the distant boom of cannon fire, felt more in the chest than heard with the ear's ghostly reverberations from long-forgotten battles. Among the most enduring legends is the tale of a young Confederate soldier whose spirit still lingers near one of the stately mansions bordering White Point Garden. According to local lore, the soldier was just 17 when he enlisted, swept up in the fevered patriotism of the Confederacy. He left behind his home and sweetheart in Virginia and marched into Charleston in 1863. Assigned to man the artillery batteries that protected the harbor, letters from the time, preserved in the archives of nearby museums, speak of his longing for home, his fear of battle, and his dream of returning to marry the girl he left behind. That dream would never come true. During a surprise bombardment from Union ships, the boy was mortally wounded by shrapnel near the very ground where White Point Garden now stands. He died far from home, buried hastily in a makeshift grave before the cannon fire resumed. His family never recovered the body, and his name faded into history, a casualty not only of war but of time. Yet, according to numerous reports, he has never truly left. In the foggy light of early morning or the moonlit hours just before midnight, passersby have claimed to see a young man in a tattered gray uniform wandering the sidewalk near the seawall. He appears confused, sometimes clutching his stomach as if still in pain, and vanishes the moment anyone tries to approach. A cold breeze often accompanies his presence, even on Charleston's warm summer nights. Some have seen him standing beneath the ancient live oaks, staring out toward the water, as though watching for ships that will never return. Others say they've encountered him in fleeting reflections, in the glass of a mansion window, or in the still water of a nearby fountain. One local resident swore she saw the ghost outside her home on East Battery Street, his figure faint but unmistakable. He seemed to be knocking at the door, she said, like a soldier coming home only. There was no sound, and no one was there when she opened it. Visitors to the grand mansions along the Battery have also reported unexplained phenomena. In one particular home, chandeliers are said to sway without cause, and footsteps echo through empty hallways. Guests have described feeling a sudden cold grip on their shoulder, or hearing soft weeping late at night. Tour guides often avoid mentioning these stories unless asked directly, perhaps out of respect or fear, while skeptics might dismiss these encounters as imagination fueled by the city's long history. The consistency of the reports is difficult to ignore. Paranormal investigators who have studied the area with thermal cameras and EMF meters claim that White Point Garden, in particular, emits unusual energy spikes. One team even captured an image of what appeared to be a soldier's silhouette, framed by the wrought iron fencing of a nearby monument, though no one else was present at the time. The Battery's haunted past is not limited to Civil War spirits. Older tales speak of colonial-era ghosts, pirates hung in the square, and victims of yellow fever plagues that swept through the city. But it is the image of the lone Confederate soldier, lost in time and far from the embrace of home, that remains most vivid. His story embodies the tragic cost of war, not just the death of the body, but the haunting of the soul. Today, as tourists walk the Battery and admire the historic architecture and panoramic ocean views, most remain blissfully unaware of the stories that rippled beneath the surface. But those who linger just a little longer, who feel the air grow colder and the breeze whisper through the trees, might sense something else, a quiet presence watching from the shadows. A young man searching for peace along the edge of a city that never forgot him. Campbell's Covered Bridge, nestled in the quiet woods near Clinton, South Carolina, is the last remaining covered bridge in the state. Built in 1909 and named after local landowner Alexander Lafayette Campbell, this wooden relic once served as a vital crossing over Beaver Dam Creek, while it now stands as a cherished piece of local history and a scenic picnic destination. The bridge's timeless charm belies the darkness that lingers in the shadows. For years, stories have swirled about the haunting energy that cloaks the bridge after sundown, stories that have turned this picturesque structure into a paranormal hotspot. Locals whisper of a young couple who died tragically on the bridge long ago. As the tale goes, they were lovers from rival families, forbidden to see one another. Under the cover of night, they would meet in secret, often on the very bridge where their lives would end. One stormy evening, they took a horse-drawn carriage to flee the town and begin a new life together. But the swollen creek had weakened the bridge's support beams. As the carriage rumbled across, the structure groaned under the weight before collapsing, plunging the couple into the churning waters below. The bodies were found days later downstream, their arms still entwined. Ever since, Campbell's Covered Bridge has become a site of strange happenings, explained phenomena that defy logic but feel deeply, painfully human. Visitors often report the sound of footsteps echoing across the wooden boards, even when the bridge is empty. Some say the creaking sounds are unjust wood contracting with the night air. But the residual imprint of that final carriage crossing. Laughter is another chilling detail often mentioned, high-pitched and fleeting. It carries on the wind like a whisper from the past. Many believe it's the woman's laugh, light, hopeful, forever captured in the moment before tragedy struck. Paranormal investigators who've set up overnight recordings have captured faint voices, occasional sobs, and even what appears to be the soft whinny of a horse, though no animals were nearby. One of the most unnerving stories comes from a man who visited the bridge late one October evening. He was a skeptic, curious about the local legends, but dismissive of ghosts. While standing in the center of the bridge, he felt an overwhelming sense of sorrow so intense it brought him to tears. As he turned to leave, he heard the clatter of hooves on wood behind him. Turning quickly, he saw nothing, but the sound persisted, growing louder before abruptly stopping, followed by the splashing sound of something falling into water. Shaken, he never returned. Others have reported cold spots on warm nights, or sudden gusts of wind that pass through the bridge even when the surrounding woods are still. Photographs taken at night occasionally reveal strange orbs or shadowy figures near the bridge entrance. Some show a faint outline of a couple standing side by side, facing away, as if preparing to flee into the night again. Despite the eerie activity, the spirits at Campbell's Covered Bridge don't seem malevolent. The energy is heavy with grief, but not with anger. Many who've encountered these phenomena describe a profound sense of longing and unfinished love, a tragedy that keeps replaying itself across the span of creaking wood and rusted bolts. Folklore has also grown around the bridge, with teenagers daring each other to visit at midnight, especially on stormy nights that resemble the conditions of the couple's fatal journey. They claim that if you stand quietly in the center of the bridge and listen carefully, You might hear the distant rumble of wheels, or feel a cold hand brush against yours, brief, delicate, and unmistakably human. Some say that the spirits are not just reenacting their final moments, but are still waiting for someone to hear them, to witness their love, to remember them not as ghosts, but as to people whose dreams were cut short by fate. Even by day, the bridge seems to carry an aura of the past. The filtered light through the tree canopy gives the structure an almost dreamlike quality. It's beautiful, peaceful, but never quite still. Visitors sometimes speak of a strange weight in the air, an invisible presence that seems to observe from just beyond the tree line, whether one believes in spirits or not. Campbell's covered bridge evokes something that resonates with the human experience: love, loss, and the echo of what might have been. The bridge is more than just an artifact of a bygone era. It is a living story etched into timber and water, held together not just by beams and nails, but by memory and emotion. As the sun dips below the horizon and twilight casts long shadows across the wooden slats, Campbell's covered bridge becomes something more than historic. It becomes sacred, a place where the living and the dead share the same path, where whispers ride the breeze, and where tragedy has left a mark not easily washed away by time or rain. Brook Green Gardens, nestled in the coastal town of Morrill's Inlet, South Carolina, is one of the most serene and picturesque places in the state. Sprawling over 9,000 acres of lush, low-country terrain, it features exquisite sculptures, flowering pathways, moss-draped oaks, and meticulously curated gardens. Founded in 1931 by Archer and Anna Hyatt Huntington on the grounds of 4 former rice plantations, the space is a living homage to art, history, and nature. Yet beneath its surface beauty lies a deeper, more somber energy. When the sun dips below the horizon and darkness settles over the grounds, Brook Green Gardens transforms into something else entirely: a place of whispers, shadows, and spectral presence. Visitors and staff alike have long reported encounters with the unexplained. By day, the paths feel peaceful, a sanctuary filled with the chirping of birds and the rustle of leaves in the wind. But at night, the same trails become heavy with an uncanny stillness. Footsteps echo across gravel paths when no one is there. Unseen eyes seem to follow from the cover of dense foliage, and lights, small, flickering, and blue-white are often seen darting through the trees or hovering briefly before vanishing into the night. The most common reports involve ghostly figures gliding along the garden trails, often appearing in period clothing. Some describe a woman in a long, tattered dress, drifting silently between the statues, her face obscured by shadow. Others speak of a man in a wide-brimmed hat standing near the old rice fields, staring across the marshland as if waiting for something or someone that never came. These apparitions vanish as quickly as they appear, leaving behind only a shiver of cold air and the uncomfortable feeling of being watched. Many believe these spirits are tied to the land's painful past. Before Brook Green Gardens became a haven for art and sculpture, it was the site of several large rice plantations. Enslaved Africans toiled in brutal conditions here, carving irrigation ditches by hand, working ankle-deep in water, and harvesting the crops that enriched the plantation owners. Their labor shaped the land, and their suffering left an imprint too powerful to be erased by time or beauty. Some visitors say they've seen shadowy figures in the slave cemetery, an unmarked patch of woods where generations of enslaved people were laid to rest. Even in daylight, that section of the gardens feels different, quieter, more reverent. At night, the temperature drops sharply near the cemetery. Camera batteries drain unexpectedly. Some who walk through report hearing hushed voices or feeling a gentle touch on their shoulder, as if someone is trying to speak but cannot. A former night security guard once shared his experiences during the quiet hours when the gardens were closed to the public. He recalled patrolling near the live oak, an iconic stretch of ancient oaks planted in the 1700s. He heard the crunch of footsteps behind him, soft and rhythmic. Turning around, he found no one. He called out into the darkness, shining his flashlight across the path, but the light seemed swallowed by the night. Moments later, he saw a figure in the distant stole, unmoving, watching him from beneath the limbs of a twisted oak. As he approached, it vanished like mist. Another strange phenomenon involves the sculptures themselves. Some staff claim certain statues subtly shift position overnight, as if they've been turned slightly or are now facing a new direction. One of the most whispered about is a statue of a grieving woman with downcast eyes. Employees say that on particularly foggy mornings, her expression appears altered, more sorrowful, her eyes almost tearful. No evidence of tampering is ever found, and no logical explanation offered. The lights that flicker among the trees remain a mystery. Often seen near the marshes or in the wilder parts of the garden, they behave unlike any natural phenomenon. Some hover in place before darting off at impossible angles. Others dance in patterns that suggest intent, almost as if responding to an unseen rhythm. Paranormal researchers have tried to capture them using infrared cameras and motion sensors. But the lights remain elusive, sometimes visible only to the naked eye. Despite the eerie events, there's no sense of evil at Brook Green Gardens. The spirits here do not seem malicious. They are quiet, watchful, and if anything mournful. It's as if they remain to bear witness, to ensure that their lives, their struggles, and their history are not forgotten beneath layers of beauty and progress. Some spiritualists who have visited the grounds speak of an overwhelming presence of ancestral energy. They describe the gardens as a veil-thin place, where the boundary between the physical and spiritual worlds is unusually porous. Here, they say, memories become form, and grief carves its shape into the earth like water shaping stone. Brook Green Gardens is a place of contrasts, life and death, celebration and sorrow, sculpture and shadow. While tourists stroll its walkways in daylight, snapping photos and admiring the artistic mastery, few suspect the energy that stirs just beneath their feet. But those who linger after hours, those who dare to return at dusk of dawn, leave with stories they can explain and a newfound respect for the land's history. The beauty of Brook Green is undeniable, but so too is its haunting. It stands as both a tribute to art and a silent memorial to those who once labored unseen and unheard. And when night falls and the last echo of footsteps fades into the trees, the gardens exhale secrets long buried and never quite forgotten. Deep within the Blue Ridge foothills, near Walhalla, South Carolina, lies a cold, echoing relic of the past, a Stumphouse Tunnel, carved into the granite of Stumphouse Mountain. This abandoned and unfinished railroad tunnel was originally intended to connect Charleston to Cincinnati in the mid-1800s. Yet despite years of labor and ambition, the Civil War and financial difficulties brought construction to a halt. What remains is a damp, dark passage stretching over 1,600 feet into the mountainside, shrouded in mystery and whispered tales of the supernatural. Though now a tourist site and part of a public park, the Stumphouse Tunnel is infamous for the unsettling sensations it inspires in those brave enough to step inside. The deeper one walks into the tunnel, the heavier the air becomes. And not just from the cool mist that seems to hang in the space like a ghost of its own. Visitors report sudden drops in temperature, even on sweltering summer days. It's not uncommon for people to feel as though something unseen is brushing past them, trailing a cold finger down the spine. Despite being entirely alone, whispers often echo along the tunnel walls, soft and indistinct murmurs that seem to come from just around the corner or right behind one's ear. Some have even claimed to hear their names being called in voices that mimic the tone and cadence of loved ones who aren't there. These phantom voices vanish into the oppressive darkness as quickly as they come, leaving only questions and a pounding heart in their wake. Among the many legends tied to the Stumphouse Tunnel, one of the most persistent is the story of a group of Irish immigrant workers who died during the tunnel's construction. Labor conditions were brutal, with long days, unstable rock formations, and a near-total absence of safety protocols. It's said that at least a few workers were buried alive in sudden cave-ins, their bodies never recovered, their tools still rusting somewhere deep in the sealed-off chambers. Their restless spirits are said to haunt the tunnel, pacing its length eternally. Some visitors have described seeing shadowy figures darting between the tunnel's stone walls, only to vanish when approached. Others recall seeing faint lantern lights bobbing in the distance, accompanied by the rhythmic clang of pickaxes, echoing from somewhere deeper than the tunnel, logically extends ghostly echoes of the labor that never ended. There are reports of a solitary man, drenched in old-fashioned work clothes, who sometimes appears near the tunnel entrance. He never speaks. Witnesses describe him as gaunt, with hollow eyes and a slack jaw. He vanishes when approached or spoken to. Some believe he's the spirit of a foreman who met a tragic end in the tunnel. Others think he is a projection of the many forgotten souls left behind when the tunnel was abandoned. During the 20th century, the tunnel became a favorite local haunt for daring teenagers and amateur ghost hunters. Groups would enter with flashlights, joking and laughing, until the tunnel turned against them. Batteries drained inexplicably. Lights flickered and died. Disembodied footsteps echoed behind them, matching their pace. Some fled in panic, convinced they were being followed. A few refused to speak about what they saw at all. One particular account tells of a girl named Emily, who explored the tunnel with friends one October night. As they moved deeper into the darkness, she said she saw a pale face peer out from a small alcove in the rock. It wasn't one of her friends. The face had hollow eyes, like pools of dark water, and a gaping mouth frozen in a silent scream. When she turned to show her friends, the face had vanished, but none of them ever returned to the tunnel again. There are other stories too. Strange lights flickering on the walls, like fireflies, though no electrical source exists. The sensation of being grabbed by unseen hands. The sound of a train whistle echoing through the chamber, even though no tracks were ever completed. One visitor claimed he heard a child giggling softly, though he was entirely alone. He sprinted out of the tunnel and refused to go back. Even park staff who monitor the tunnel admit that certain parts of the site feel different, heavier, as if the past refuses to rest. Some have heard tools clinking against stone when the tunnel is supposed to be empty. Others have noticed footprints in the ever-present moisture on the tunnel floor that do to match any known patterns and seem to vanish halfway along the path. Despite the eerie legends, the Stumphouse Tunnel remains a place of historical significance and raw natural beauty. But its allure goes far beyond its unfinished walls. It is a place where time feels suspended, where voices from the past seem to linger in the rock and mist, and where the darkness holds more than just shadows. For those who enter, the question I send, whether the tunnel is haunted at S, whether they walk out, the same as they went in, tucked beneath ancient oak trees draped in Spanish moss. The old Sheldon Church ruins in Yemassee, South Carolina, are a place where beauty, history, and sorrow intertwine. Once a proud symbol of colonial ambition and architectural grace, this 18th century church now stands as a haunting monument to time's cruelty and the toll of war. Its weathered brick columns rise like sentinels from the forest floor, surrounded by cracked tombstones and patches of wild ivy. The church has no roof, no doors, no living congregation, only echoes of the past and whispers of those who never truly left. Built in the mid-1700s as Prince William's Parish Church, Old Sheldon was one of the first attempts in America to replicate the grand architecture of European churches. Its design was majestic, featuring Roman columns and arched windows, a clear testament to the wealth and influence of the Low Country planters who attended services there. But its days of glory were short-lived. The church was first set ablaze by British forces during the Revolutionary War. Later, during the Civil War, Union troops allegedly burned it again, though some historians debate whether it was fire or neglect that led to its second fall. Today, all that remains are the skeletal ruins, towering brick walls, crumbling graves, and scattered debris, but the emotional weight of centuries remains embedded in every stone. Visitors often speak of a heaviness in the air as they approach the grounds. The silence is thick, broken only by the rustle of leaves or the distant calls of birds. Yet many say they hear something more, faint footsteps in the grass when no one is there. The rustling of skirts just beyond the edge of vision, and hushed voices carried by the breeze. Some who wander among the ruins report an overwhelming sensation of being watched, even in broad daylight. The shadows between the columns seem to move ever so slightly, as if unseen eyes are following each step. Tourists who arrive with laughter and curiosity often leave subdued, disturbed by something they can't quite explain. Cameras malfunction without reason, phones lose signal near the graves, dogs grow uneasy, whining or refusing to enter the grounds. A particularly chilling tale involves a visitor who knelt to examine an old gravestone and felt a sudden cold grip on his shoulder. Spinning around, he found no one there. Moments later, he heard footsteps retreating through the grass behind him, slow and deliberate, but the area was empty. Others have captured strange mists in their photographs' ethereal forms, rising among the ruins, where there should be only air and brick. There are persistent reports of ghostly figures seen wandering the property. One woman, dressed in what appears to be 18th century mourning attire, has been spotted weeping near a grave that bears the name of a young soldier. Witnesses say she appears solid until they move closer, then she fades, vanishing into the broken light. Another commonly seen apparition is a man in a dark coat and tricorn hat, who stands motionless near the front columns, as if guarding the church long after death. He disappears when approached, leaving only the echo of footsteps in the dirt. Even vehicles parked near the church have been part of eerie encounters. Some drivers report returning to their cars to find the doors unlocked or windows fogged from the inside. A few claim to have heard someone tapping on their windows late at night, only to find no one there. More than one person has sworn that a pale face appeared briefly in their rearview mirror before fading into the dusk. Local legends say the land itself is cursed, forever haunted by the destruction and bloodshed that took place there. During the Revolutionary War, the surrounding area saw violence and betrayal, and it's believed that many soldiers and civilians alike met their ends near the church walls. In the Civil War, the church became a target once more, caught in the crossfire of history and resentment. With so many lives lost and desecrated, it's little wonder the site now exudes an air of profound sorrow. Despite its tragic past, the Old Sheldon Church ruins remain a place of pilgrimage. Some come to admire its weathered elegance, to photograph its haunting beauty, or to reflect quietly among the tombstones. Others are drawn by its darker reputation, those who seek signs from the other side, who walk the grounds at dusk with cameras, recorders, and whispered prayers. It is a place that defies simple explanation. The veil between past and present feels thin here, as though time moves differently among the broken bricks and fallen leaves. Whether one believes in ghosts or not, few leave untouched by the atmosphere. There's something eternal about the way the sun sets through the skeletal windows, how the moss sways with secrets in the wind. The Old Sheldon Church ruins may never hold another sermon, but its story continues, etched in stone, in memory, and perhaps in spirit. For those who listen closely, the voices of history still speak, and their sorrow lingers like mist in the morning light. Nestled in the heart of Charleston's historic French Quarter, the Pink House stands as one of the city's oldest surviving residential buildings. With its faded pastel facade and colonial architecture, it exudes a quiet charm that draws the eye and lingers in the memory. But beneath its quaint appearance lies a history layered with mystery, tragedy, and whispers from the past. For centuries, the Pink House has stood witness to the passage of time, and many believe the house itself remembers everything. Constructed around 1694 from Bermuda stone, the Pink House is an architectural anomaly in Charleston, a color and material more commonly seen in tropical locales. Its unusual hue and weathered texture lend it an almost dreamlike quality, as if the house has stepped out of another era. For most, it appears charming and serene. But for those who've spent time within its walls or passed by during quiet, shadowed hours, the Pink House tells a different story, one filled with chilling encounters and inexplicable events. Over the centuries, the Pink House served various purposes: tavern, brothel, private residence, and artist studio. Its long and layered past is tied to the city's earliest settlers, as well as the darker corners of its colonial history. It is said that in the 18th century, the house was a popular gathering place for pirates who roamed the Carolina coast. Rumors persist that some of Charleston's most infamous figures once drank and plotted within its stone walls, and that some never left. One of the most well-known legends connected to the Pink House is a story of a woman named Annabelle, believed to have once owned or lived in the home during its brothel days. Described as a fiercely independent woman who refused to leave Charleston even during outbreaks of disease and war, she is said to have died in the house under mysterious circumstances. Some claim she was poisoned by a jealous lover. Others believe she took her own life. Regardless of the truth, many visitors and workers over the years believe her spirit lingers still. Those who've occupied the Pink House have reported strange and unsettling phenomena. Lights flicker without explanation, even when the wiring has been checked and deemed sound. Footsteps echo through empty hallways at night, pacing slowly from room to room. Cold spots bloom suddenly in corners of the home, only to vanish moments later. Several people have seen shadowy figures in the windows, pale silhouettes that vanish when approached, leaving only the rustle of unseen fabric in their wake. A former tenant recalled waking up to the sound of weeping late at night. The sound seemed to come from the old fireplace, though it would stop the moment anyone entered the room. Another resident spoke of hearing soft laughter and the sound of a woman humming an unfamiliar tune, always the same melody, always just out of reach. Paranormal investigators who visited the home captured unexplained EVP recordings, including one chilling phrase repeated more than once: "Still here." Even those who simply pass by the house often report a strange sense of being watched. It's common for tourists to pause for photos, only to later discover odd shapes or misty outlines in the images, sometimes appearing in the windows, sometimes near the doorway. A number of people have claimed to see a woman in old-fashioned clothing standing at the upper window, looking out over the street as if waiting for someone. When they blink or glance away, she disappears. Locals tend to speak of the Pink House in hushed tones. While it's celebrated as a historic landmark, it's also widely acknowledged to be one of Charleston's most haunted locations. Some believe the house itself is a kind of spiritual magnet, drawing in energies from the past, holding them tightly within its thick stone walls. Others believe something traumatic happened there long ago, something not fully recorded in history, but etched into the atmosphere nonetheless. One particularly unnerving tale involves an artist who once used the Pink House as a studio in the mid-20th century. He claimed that objects in the house would move on their own, including a heavy easel that shifted several feet while he stepped out for lunch. He also described the feeling of someone standing directly behind him while he painted, so strong that he could even hear breathing. When he finally moved his studio elsewhere, he left behind several unfinished portraits, each depicting a woman with hollow eyes and a sorrowful expression. None of the women had posed for him. Despite its reputation, the Pink House continues to be a place of fascination and allure. It has inspired painters, poets, and storytellers alike, all drawn to its delicate beauty and the spectral presence that seems to hum beneath its surface. It is a reminder that in Charleston, the past is never far away, that some houses are not just shelters, but vessels of memory and emotion. Today, as people stroll down Chalmers Street and pause before the little pink building with its crooked roof and iron balcony, they often sense something stirring just beyond sight, a presence, a story not yet finished. Whether it's the ghost of Annabelle, the echoes of pirates long gone, or simply the spirit of the city itself, the Pink House continues to breathe with life that defies explanation. For in a place so old, so full of beauty and pain, it's not surprising that the walls might still remember and that some shadows choose never to leave. The Manigault House stands as one of Charleston's most elegant and historically rich residences. Built in 1823, this federal-style mansion is a marvel of early 19th century architecture, featuring ornate plasterwork, sweeping staircases, and graceful symmetry. But beyond its refined facade lies a legacy steeped in spectral mystery. Locals, staff, and countless visitors have long whispered of ghostly happenings that seem to defy explanation. From footsteps echoing in empty corridors to the sudden movement of objects and chilling encounters with apparitions, The Manigault House has earned its reputation as one of the most haunted historic homes in South Carolina. Owned originally by the wealthy Manigault family, the house was meant to be a symbol of prosperity, sophistication, and social prominence. Its design was meant to impress, with each room showcasing the affluence and taste of its owners. However, with that affluence came tragedy. Over the decades, sickness, death, and the upheaval of war left their mark upon the house and its inhabitants. And it is said that one former owner whose identity has been obscured by time refused to let go even in death. Many believe the spirit most frequently encountered in the house is that of a man, possibly Gabriel Manigault, a member of the original family. He was deeply invested in preserving the legacy of his home and lineage. His protective nature is thought to have extended far beyond his lifetime. Several tour guides and caretakers have described a tall, shadowy figure watching silently from stair landings or disappearing down hallways with a sudden gust of cold air in his wake. One such encounter occurred late one autumn evening when a staff member stayed behind to finish organizing the library. She heard heavy, deliberate footsteps approach the room. Thinking it was a colleague, she turned to speak only to find no one there. A chill swept across the room, and the bookshelves rattled slightly, though there was no breeze. She reported seeing a faint silhouette pass through the doorway, as if silently checking her work before disappearing into the walls. Visitors, too, have had unexplainable experiences. A couple touring the house during daylight hours stopped in the grand dining room, admiring the hand-carved fireplace and period china. The woman felt a tug on her handbag, turning sharply, assuming her partner was playing a prank. But he was several feet away. Just as she began to question what had happened, one of the dining chairs shifted slightly, creaking as though someone invisible had just sat down. In another instance, a young boy on a school field trip claimed to see a man in a black coat standing in the upper hallway. He described the man as looking sad but kind and said he nodded at him before vanishing. The boy's teacher brushed it off as imagination. A photo taken moments later showed a faint figure near the banister, one that hadn't been visible to anyone else. There is also the curious case of the music room, where a beautiful antique piano rests. Though untouched for years, several visitors and employees have reported hearing soft piano music drifting from the room. It usually plays in the early evening, just before closing time. The melodies are faint but elegant, as if played by someone long accustomed to entertaining guests. When staff investigate, the room is empty, the piano lid closed, its keys unmoved, yet the air remains thick with the resonance of the final notes. The third floor, one servant's quarters, holds a different kind of energy. Here, the temperature often drops suddenly, and some guests report feeling watched or followed. Whispering voices have been heard in the back stairwell, often too soft to make out the words but distinct enough to stir unease. Lights flicker even after extensive rewiring. Motion detectors sometimes go off in locked, empty rooms. Though not malicious, these occurrences have led many to believe the spirits of past staff still linger, perhaps watching over their old responsibilities. Despite all the activity, most agree the energy in the Manigault house is not hostile. There is a solemn reverence to the hauntings, as though the spirits within seek only to be acknowledged and to protect the history they helped build. Paranormal investigators who have spent nights in the house report capturing EVP recordings of soft voices, some saying stay, others whispering names no longer found in census records. The most dramatic encounter occurred during a thunderstorm, when a volunteer guide remained inside to secure the windows and check the exhibits. As she walked past the drawing room, she saw what she thought was another guide standing at the window, looking out at the lightning. She called his name, no response. When she approached, the figure turned slowly, revealing an expression of deep sadness. The air went still, and the figure dissolved into the shadows. The guide would later say she felt more sorrow than fear, as if she had interrupted a moment of longing from another time. The Manigault house endures not just as a monument to Charleston's architectural heritage, but also as a bridge to its spectral past. Whether it's the protective spirit of a long-dead owner, the quiet echoes of devoted servants, or the music of unseen hands, The house continues to live and breathe through its hauntings, and for those who visit with open eyes and listening ears, the stories within its walls are still being told. In the heart of South Carolina lies one of the most haunted battlefields of the American Revolution, the historic Camden Revolutionary War site. Today, it may appear as a well-maintained historical park, dotted with period homes, reconstructed redoubts, and tranquil walking trails, but beneath the calm exterior lingers a far darker energy. The residue of war, bloodshed, and the tortured spirits who never left the battlefield. Camden was the site of one of the most catastrophic defeats for the American forces during the Revolutionary War. On August 16, 1780, British troops under General Charles Cornwallis decisively defeated the Continental Army, led by General Horatio Gates. The battlefield ran red with blood as hundreds of American soldiers fell, many never receiving a proper burial. Their cries of anguish echoed across the Pine Barrens, and even now, some say those echoes still resonate through the trees. Locals and visitors alike report strange occurrences near the redoubt and along the old Camden Road. On quiet evenings, when the wind is still and the park has long since closed, ghostly musket fire can be heard in the distance, sometimes accompanied by the faint rumble of drums. Others have claimed to see the fleeting silhouettes of soldiers in Continental uniforms, their bodies translucent, their movements as if trapped in a moment of eternal retreat. One of the most chilling stories involves the apparition of a lone horseman believed to be a fallen cavalry officer who gallops through the fields just before dawn. His uniform is tattered, and his face appears pale and wounded, with a hollow gaze that locks with anyone watching. Some believe he is the ghost of a patriot scout who was captured and executed by the British near the edge of the woods. His spirit, restless and vengeful, is doomed to forever circle the site of his death. Another frequent phenomenon involves the Kershaw Cornwallis House, which served as British headquarters during the occupation of Camden. Staff have reported cold spots that appear without explanation, and voices whispering in empty rooms. Footsteps echo on wooden floors even when the house is vacant. On more than one occasion, visitors have seen the ghostly image of a British officer standing near a window, staring out across the battlefield as though overseeing a war that has long since ended. In the reconstructed Patriot Redoubt, strange light anomalies have been photographed, glowing orbs and misty forms that defy explanation. Paranormal investigators who have spent the night there speak of sudden battery drains, unexplained shadows, and even the sensation of being touched or pushed. One investigator reported hearing the clank of a bayonet hitting stone, followed by the unmistakable sound of labored breathing close to his ear, though no one else was nearby. One of the more unsettling tales involves a spectral reenactment that plays out during certain times of the year. Campers near the historic site have claimed to hear the distant sound of marching boots and muffled commands being shouted across the darkness. A thick fog will sometimes roll in without warning, and within that fog, shadowy figures can be seen, moving with purpose, ghostly soldiers reliving their final stand. These spectral reenactments are said to always end the same way, with the sound of screams, gunfire, and a chilling silence that follows. There's also the case of the weeping woman near the old Powder magazine. Dressed in a simple colonial gown, she appears to be searching the field as though looking for someone, perhaps a lost husband or son who never returned from battle. Witnesses who have approached her say she vanishes the moment they get too close, leaving behind only the lingering scent of lilacs. Not all spirits here are mournful, some are angry. Reports from the outskirts of the site speak of unseen forces throwing small rocks or sticks at passers-by, and strange growling sounds that seem to follow visitors down the wooded trails. One local historian believes these manifestations are the spirits of loyalists or militia fighters, bitter souls who refuse to share the land even in death. Even more unnerving is the sensation felt by many who walk the grounds alone. It begins as a slight heaviness in the chest, followed by an overwhelming sense of dread. Some describe it as the feeling of being watched from multiple directions at once. A few have said it as if the ground itself remembers the blood that was spilled upon it, and mourns in silence, despite or perhaps because of its haunted reputation. The historic Camden Revolutionary War site continues to attract curious visitors and history buffs. The caretakers of the grounds acknowledge the reports, but approach them with reverence. After all, these are not just ghost stories. They are echoes of real men and women who fought, suffered, and died on this very soil. Their presence, whether imagined or not, is a testament to the power of memory and the weight of history. Whether you're a skeptic or a believer, one thing is certain. When the sun sets over Camden, the past doesn't sleep. It lingers in the creak of ancient timbers, in the soft thud of phantom boots across the earth, and in the cold breath of air that brushes your neck when no one is near. The war may be over, but for some, the battle never truly ended. By day, the Charleston Library Society stands as a beacon of knowledge and history, a sanctuary of aged books and ancient wisdom nestled in the heart of the city's historic district. Established in 1748, it is one of the oldest library institutions in the United States and a proud symbol of Charleston, as deep intellectual and cultural roots. Yet, as night falls and the gaslight flickers outside its stately doors, a different atmosphere takes hold, one shrouded in mystery, shadow, and the subtle, unrelenting presence of something unseen. Many who enter the library, society's grand reading rooms, feel the weight of its history settle onto their shoulders like a heavy woolen cloak. The scent of old paper and waxed floors clings to the air, while towering bookshelves cast long, deep shadows that seem to shift when no one is looking. Though the staff closes the doors to patrons at the end of the day, stories persist of motion sensors tripping, lights flickering without cause, and disembodied whispers echoing in the silence. Librarians who work late have spoken of an uneasy feeling in the stacks, a sense that they are not alone. One woman, a longtime employee tasked with cataloging rare books, reported hearing soft footsteps behind her on multiple occasions. Every time she turned, there was nothing but still air and books older than the nation itself. She recounted how, one evening, as she reached for a volume of 18th-century political essays, she felt an icy breath on her neck, as though someone was leaning in close to read over her shoulder. She left early that night and never returned alone after dusk. It is widely believed that the library's spectral presence belongs to a former librarian from the 19th century, a woman named Annabel Green. Historical records show that Annabel dedicated her life to the Library Society, working there for nearly 50 years until a sudden death from pneumonia in the winter of 1889. She was known to be meticulous, stern, and deeply protective of the library's rarest works. In life, she was the keeper of order, and in death, many believe she remains just as vigilant. Visitors who stray into the back rooms or research chambers often describe a strange pressure in the air as if unseen eyes are studying them. Some report books falling from shelves without provocation or finding volumes mysteriously open to specific pages when they return to a reading desk. A college student researching colonial literature once claimed that a thick book slid toward him across the table. It stopped directly in front of him, open to a page, describing a librarian's role as the eternal guardian of truth. No one else was present at the time. Security footage has only added to the mystery. On more than one occasion, cameras have captured faint, shadow-like figures moving past the aisles long after the building was locked. One clip shows a transparent outline, standing at a lectern, flipping through a book that cannot be identified. When staff reviewed the footage, the timestamp confirmed no one had been in the building during that time. In the upper gallery, which houses some of the oldest books in the collection, the sense of presence intensifies. Staff say that here, the air turns colder without explanation, and strange sounds can be heard: rustling paper, a chair scraping across the wooden floor, or the unmistakable sound of someone clearing their throat. When investigated, these disturbances vanish like smoke in the wind. One of the eeriest tales involves a young intern who was helping to organize archival documents late one evening. She was alone in the reading room when she heard the gentle shushing sound, distinct and deliberate. Startled, she looked around and saw nothing. But when she stood up, she noticed that a heavy book had been placed on top of her laptop. She had not moved it. Scribbled on a notepad nearby were the words, "Respect the silence." The handwriting did not match her own, though unsettling. Most who experienced the paranormal within the Charleston Library Society described the presence as more watchful than malicious. It is as though the spirit or spirits still cared deeply for the knowledge stored within those walls. There is no chaos or malevolence, only a deep yearning for preservation, for silence, and for order. Charleston itself is a city rich with haunted lore, and the library is just one of many historic buildings touched by the past. But what sets the Library Society apart is the gentleness of its ghostly presence. It is not a house of screams or sudden terrors. It is a house of whispers, of guiding hands, and of spirits who still find purpose in protecting what they once cherished. To this day, patrons and staff alike tread a little more carefully in its hallowed halls. They speak in hushed tones, return books to their rightful places, and leave a light on in the research wing, not just for convenience, but perhaps as a sign of respect to the unseen librarian who may still be watching, waiting, and guiding those who seek truth in the pages of the past. Fort Moultrie, standing resolute on Sullivan's Island, just across the harbor from Charleston, is steeped in centuries of American military history. From its humble beginnings in the Revolutionary War to its later service in the Civil War and both World Wars, this coastal stronghold has borne witness to bloodshed, bravery, and the endless march of time. But among its crumbling brick walls and moss-draped ramparts, something else lingers, something that cannot be explained by history books or battlefield maps. By daylight, Fort Moultrie feels like a place where time itself has paused. Tourists walk its perimeter, tracing the outlines of cannons and peering through gun ports once aimed at enemy ships. But when the crowds disperse and the sun dips low into the Atlantic, the atmosphere begins to change. The air grows heavy with salt and something colder, something that seeps from the ground itself. Park rangers and after-hours maintenance workers have long reported strange experiences within the fort's aging walls. One common tale is that of phantom footsteps, heavy, deliberate, and echoing through empty corridors. Many have turned, expecting to see a fellow staff member behind them, only to find nothing but the dim corridor stretching silently into darkness. These footsteps are most often heard near the older sections of the fort, particularly the original powder magazine, where many soldiers once worked and some, according to lore, died in accidental explosions. There are even whispers of a figure clad in a tattered Revolutionary War uniform appearing near the magazine, standing guard in silence before vanishing into thin air. Another chilling location is the officers' quarters, where soldiers lived during the Civil War. A former staff member once recounted staying late to organize an exhibit. As she closed a display case, she caught movement in the reflection of the glass. A man in gray, his eyes sunken, standing behind her. When she spun around, no one was there. The door to the hallway, which had been firmly shut, creaked open moments later. In some parts of Fort Moultrie, the temperature drops without warning. Visitors have described sudden chills, even on the hottest summer days. One particularly strange incident involved a group of students on a guided tour. As they passed through the sally port, several of them claimed to hear distant cannon fire, short, rhythmic booms that echoed as if from another time. The ranger leading the tour dismissed it as imagination, but later admitted to fellow staff that he, too, had heard it before. One of the fort's more well-known hauntings centers around a solitary sentry who reportedly patrols the walls late at night. Described as a tall man in an outdated military coat, this spectral guard has been seen pacing the ramparts with a musket slung over his shoulder. Witnesses say he disappears if approached, but his footfalls can still be heard for several minutes after he vanishes. Some believe this is the ghost of a young guard who died from exposure during a bitter winter night in the early 1800s, his frozen body discovered still clutching his rifle. There are also tales of disembodied voices, low murmurs, commands shouted in old dialects, and cries that seem to echo from underground. Some visitors claim they've heard names being called out, or the sound of soldiers preparing for battle, rifles clinking, boots pounding, and drums beating a cadence that fades as quickly as it begins. These sounds are said to originate from the parade ground, especially around dusk, when the light plays tricks on the eyes and the past feels painfully close. Perhaps the most unsettling reports involve the old prison cells tucked beneath the fort, used during various periods to hold deserters, spies, and captured enemies. These dank, narrow rooms have long been a source of eerie experiences. Tour guides report hearing scratching sounds behind the walls, chains rattling when no one is nearby, and cold gusts of air seeping from sealed doorways. Some even refuse to enter the lower levels alone after sunset, claiming the sensation of being watched becomes unbearable. One former caretaker spoke of locking up late one night and hearing a faint voice whisper, "Don't forget us." Just as he was turning the final key in the gate, he was alone, or so he thought. What makes Fort Moultrie's hauntings so compelling is the sheer range of spirits said to dwell there, from colonial militiamen to Confederate soldiers and even German prisoners held during World War II. Each era has left its own spectral imprint, a layering of trauma and memory that seems to bleed through the fabric of time. Though Fort Moultrie no longer serves as a line of defense against foreign invaders, it remains a battleground in another sense of place, where the past refuses to rest, where soldiers long dead still march their eternal watch, and where echoes of war continue to reverberate through the present. Today, visitors walk its grounds not just for the history, but for the possibility of encountering something otherworldly. Whether it's the ghost of a loyal sentry, the chilling sounds of invisible battles, or the mournful sighs of prisoners long forgotten, Fort Moultrie remains haunted not only by its past, but by the spirits who never left. Thank you for joining me on this eerie exploration through South Carolina's most haunted places. Each location holds its own secrets and stories, some tragic, some terrifying, but all a testament to the restless spirits who refuse to be forgotten. If you enjoyed this journey into the supernatural, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a chilling story from this channel. Share your own ghostly experiences in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep your lights low, your heart steady, and remember, sometimes the past isn't done with us yet.